welcome to a replay review. Basically someone, oh geez it's bees, posted a replay in a community Discord and was asking about what went wrong in this game, what he might have been able to do to improve, since he felt he was in a solid position in the mid game and couldn't finish it off. I haven't watched this replay yet. I'm not quite sure what to expect, so we'll just jump in and see. Alright. It's a philothanic. Recognize one of the other four names, which doesn't mean too much. I haven't been playing quite as much as I used to, so being unfamiliar with people doesn't necessarily say anything. Let's see, 28,000 found right in here. Yeah, that seems perfectly reasonable. As a scientist, that's a pretty good spot. You have access to the iron and the water, so you can get into steel and your life support, which long term is something you always want as a scientist. Other reasons it's fine: glass starting half price, so no access to silicon isn't a huge deal. There's no glass consumption at the colony, no power consumption at the colony, so generally the scientist is going to be in decent shape. And 28k is a perfectly reasonable price to pay for it. Take a quick look around the rest of the map. Yeah, there's not too much to work with, honestly. This is so getting that for 28k seems like quite a bargain. I guess if you had to, you could probably go robotic somewhere around here, since there's very little water in this section of the map. Though you would worry about high electronics price and electronics consumption if you're going to go robotic. Otherwise, I guess you could go scavenger here. And that's really the only options that make sense. I'll keep playing this out and see where everyone else goes. Let's see, we're starting off with, okay, medium aluminum and 2 steel mills. That's perfectly fine. This is a bit of a nitpicky thing. Personally, as a scientist, if I'm seeing this doubled iron price and normal price steel, one thing I might do is just go into iron mines immediately instead of going to steel, because steel costs the 20 iron to put down, so that can be pretty expensive to start off with, and that might slow down your upgrade. And furthermore, if you go into iron, then you can crash out that market before your opponents get into it. Not necessarily. If they plant on a bunch of iron, then they'll have iron instantly that they can sell. But the idea still is there. There's potentially profit to be made by going to iron first instead of going straight into steel. And this kind of forgoes it. Especially in this case, since you have combo tiles. If you go into just a quick triangle right here, you get the aluminum quicker. And that's also important because that started double price. And you get that iron money. It's not a big deal, but it's something that probably would have helped a bit. I'll keep watching now. Okay, very standard high iron double steel. Seems to know what he's doing if he upgraded immediately. Yeah, he sold down his electronics, makes perfect sense. Philothanic, he's a pretty competent player from what I've seen. That's perfectly reasonable found. No nukes, so the weakish carbon isn't a big deal. Let's see. This robot's kinda digging a huge hole for himself. Like we talked about before, iron started high and he just kinda went into triple steel. He doesn't have the iron to support that. That cost a lot of iron to put down. Basically, he's not really doing anything positive by doing that. It worked well enough that he got to the upgrade, but it's not something you really want to deal with. T.beckett, let's see, he wanted to Can't say it like this. The high aluminum makes sense. Right now he's at an iron deficit. He's consuming 3 iron, producing 2, which again, we've been talking this whole time, how iron can be might be tricky given the starting prices. He didn't really deal with that appropriately. It's not a big deal. He could just transition a steel mill into an iron mine soon enough. So he's right on top of good iron, but just something to watch out for. Okay, oh geez, it's bees. Also going into a HQ2 Geo and a single farm, so yeah, this is a problem if you ask me. Again, going into the geotherm this early is a pretty serious commitment that costs 120 steel and 40 aluminum. And, well, considering the HQ3 upgrade is only 160 steel and 160 aluminum, that's a really big chunk that's not going towards the upgrade. Yes, it's important to keep your debt under control, but right now it's still only about 37k. Power's still under 100, it's not going crazy yet. So this seems unnecessary for now. Normally people wait till HQ3 to get into power. That allows him to maybe go into a second farm instead, make extra money, and advance a little more smoothly. This will slow him down in upgrades, and it won't necessarily pay off all that well. And furthermore, right, because t.beckett also went into this geo, that's already pressure on the power price, downward pressure. So going into a geo of your own is even less necessary, because it's not going to get out of control quickly. And we see that Von Eagle also grabbed his own geotherm claim. So yeah, this isn't really going to pay off. It's mostly going to slow bees down. Again, not a huge problem, but definitely I think you would be in a better position going double food. Everything else is probably a fine decision. Let's see. On Eagle going for the double iron there. Makes perfect sense. This chem move is really questionable. I mean, they're moderately profitable now. They're considerably less profitable than something like electronics. And either way, like, he can't really sustain this production. Chems aren't profitable enough to stay up for very long with no one producing fuel. So this is going to be a pretty short-term move, and it's not going to pay off much. I personally, well, I don't know what I would prefer to see instead. Probably the electronics. Actually, not even. Just go into double aluminum. Gather a ton of aluminum. Crash that market out. Because he still doesn't have aluminum, and he's right next to all this aluminum, so that's not really a good decision on his part. And I'm not sure I like the second aluminum claim. I guess as long as Von Eagle is ignoring aluminum, it works out okay. But otherwise, there is some aluminum production on the map, so this might be a bit of an overcommitment, especially since it can't be connected up easily. The way things look now, I assume it pays off decently, but yeah. I guess there's no real good alternative either. Could have ignored the silicon for longer, gone into double food or something instead. The other thing, this is the wrong silicon to take. If you want to take silicon, you know, put it like there. That way you're guaranteed to get some adjacency pretty much, unless all 3 tiles get blocked somehow. And it leaves you the opportunity to go for a triangle if you really want, though that's probably never a good idea. Anyway, bees managed to make it to HQ3. Still doing alright. No goon on that geo still, which is definitely a problem. It's not too expensive to repair if it gets blown up, although it is still a significant cost. the circuit overload would be a significant problem. Becomes a worthless tile for 120 seconds. And I guess there is the justification that mostly people will want to use mutinies to do these sorts of attacks because, well, they get something out of it instead of just passively hurting someone. Since there are no mutinies, maybe you can get away with this better, but I think against high-level players, you'll see them targeting down Scientist's power a lot. Because this is a very powerful spot B's found it in, so people will be aware that they need to slow him down. And generally attacking a Scientist's power is one of the best ways to slow them down. Because freezes on their stuff at their half duration don't do all that much. Anyway, yeah, I would have really liked to see a goon on that.
Pirates. I hate those filthy
This
bandits.
carbon quarry also strikes me as very questionable. Carbon is decently high at the moment, but that's basically going to be fluctuating a lot. Philothanic is going to be crashing and spiking it as he consumes and produces. So it's, I don't know. It doesn't seem necessary to me.
Could one refuse such a wonderful plot of land?
Certainly as a single quarry, it's not doing a ton of good so far. Meanwhile, electronics continue to go crazy, and okay, Von Eagle's finally going into sums, and Philothanic's going into some. Yeah, people need to be in electronics when it's this high. Nothing else comes close. Well, food, I guess, as the scientist. I guess it makes sense for bees not to be in it. Getting carbon scrubbing. I like carbon scrubbing as a scientist. I dislike this quarry even more if you're going for carbon scrubbing, because you don't need to have a claim devoted to carbon if you're going to be insulating yourself from that. This is problematic. They're pirates. People should be pirating this. So even if you're catching the carbon, that's still worth plenty. And if you catch some electronics, that's ridiculous. Don't separate your production like this. It's not worth it. Pirates on the silicon instead is really awkward. Well, I guess that's t.beckett's pirates, and he's the one with the super valuable stuff to be stolen. Alright, Bees gets to HQ 5 already. He's moving through upgrades very quickly, which I guess we could have seen. Again, scientist, great aluminum access, cheap glass, so there's nothing really stopping him from. I really don't understand this move into even more carbon. Again, what you're doing by overproducing carbon like this is basically subsidizing the scavenger. There are things you can do that make just as much or more money. Basically, just throw down a triangle of electronics and you'll be fine. Alright. Those electronics would make more money than the carbon, and they wouldn't have the side effect of making carbon dirt cheap. What making carbon dirt cheap does is it allows everyone to produce electronics without any real concerns, and it allows your scavenger friend to upgrade more easily, to put down off-worlds more easily. So this is just an unnecessary move that doesn't help. Picked up the second geo at some point. That's a perfectly fine decision. 2 more claims left. Not sure where they're gonna go. Putting one down in this area is probably a good idea, or just connecting up this geo going for a superconductor, because even with 2 geotherms, you see this is only plus 0.9 power. Transition into an off-world or 2, get into some optimization centers, suddenly that's a power deficit. So getting superconductor can shore up that little gap, but it's not a huge deal. Virtual reality, fine. I mean, this isn't the ideal game for it, but if it's uncontested, then, I mean, that's a perfectly respectable tile. It's not a great one. This should probably just be sold out. I understand that it's on auto sell, but the stockpile that's already there won't get sold just by turning on auto sell, and it should be. Okay, well, and now you see Carbon's crashed out completely because the scavenger sold out of it because they needed the cash. And meanwhile, electronics continue to be ridiculously good. Bees still isn't in any. This is another problem for me. I don't like this. I mean, these shouldn't be quarries. Silicon's worth nothing. Again, the biggest thing as a scientist is that yes, sometimes you do want to be producing raw resources, but most of the time, if you can get away with it, you want the raw resource price to be high, which allows you to be the sole producer of these secondary resources, because everyone else has to fight over that high price. They can't really afford to turn it into these things as effectively. Meanwhile, you just ignore it. You suck it out of the ground. You get plenty of money off of doing that. Especially since you have teleportation. These could easily be like glass or electronics. Another thing, well, you are going into an off-world. That's great. Really not much else to say about that. This aluminum mine is completely unnecessary at this point. You have nearly 800. It's $1. You're done upgrading, so that's a general trend with aluminum. It stops being useful in the late game. Although it is fair to point out that electronics will consume some, and off-world launches consume some aluminum, so like very late, aluminum will tend to rise back up since everyone will move out of it at this stage of the game, but that's a concern for later. For the moment, getting out of this tile is probably fine. Though there aren't great options to move it into. More steel is okay, but not, I mean, steel isn't worth all that much, but it does let you push to a second off-world more easily. And yeah. Or you could just move into optimization centers, start trying to get into these markets, or upgrading these. What are you going to be sending? You're going to be sending food off-world. Starting to upgrade food now, like anticipating that extra demand boosting the food price. Yeah, starting upgrades now with that in mind would be a good idea. And going back to what I said before about raw resources, again, silicon, carbon, and this water pump. None of those tiles are very profitable, and they're tiles that could be profitable very easily. If this is another reactor, another farm instead, if these are electronics, and honestly, if they're next to the base instead, because again, carbon scrubbing, you don't need those carbon tiles. If these are glass or electronics, you're just in better shape all around. There are definitely instances where you'll want to grab, say, like a high silicon far away from your base as a scientist instead of trying to ship glass from far out, but this isn't one of those situations. Once you're committing to multiple tiles of raw resources, I think you should just be in the secondary resource. And especially if you have teleportation, there's no reason not to be. Anyway. You did say that you finished a buy on someone. I assume you're going to get at t.beckett then, which is a bit unfortunate for him because he can actually defend himself. His territory really isn't great though, so long term that might not be. So I'm confused now. Maybe you do a full buyout on someone. If that is the case, then my concern is probably that you're not defending yourself fully before buying someone. But we'll see what happens. In the meantime, we'll just keep playing this out on Blazing. And all these little tiles. That's basically 6 claims that aren't doing all that much for you.
Shipment launched.
Could be like an extra $600 a second.
The engineers have advanced our production.
Which isn't to say raw material production can't be worth it. Like this water pump is like water's rising spectacularly, and having a lot of water and speculating in that market can be a very nice thing,
New
but
buildings available for auction.
it's a situational thing, and it's a bit hard to see, hard to make it work very well. Anyway, right, so the big problem here, you're going to continue going after this guy. You still have plenty of undefended stock. This guy isn't worth very much. I mean, if you look at his territory, what's he in? Yeah, just not very much interesting. He's very little water. Water is a huge problem, which means most of his production is just kind of garbage. Electronics have fallen off pretty much completely. So by buying him, you're not getting all that much. Now he's building an Offworld, so that helps a lot. But in the meantime, you have a lead, and what you generally want to do with a lead is protect yourself. Make sure that no one can make life hard for you, like they're doing now. Because once you leave this opening, people can start attacking you. And if you have multiple people attacking you, even if you have this large lead, then it's very hard to fend them off. Buy up yourself completely, then they're much less inclined to buy into you. It's much more expensive. And then you can, that's also more time to figure out who's a threat, who you can really look to deal with. So yeah, I would prefer you buying up more of yourself. I think philothanic really was the big threat the whole time. Going after him instead of t.beckett would have pretty much locked up the game for you, I think. Von Eagle has a lot of money, but otherwise it's a bit of a non-factor. He's making a lot off power now, but long term he doesn't have any significant tools.
Our robotics HQ has been upgraded.
So yeah, those are the main things. Because since you were saying that you did lose this game, it's pretty clear that from now that what happens is philothanic just finishes you off. You need to be very cognizant of who the threats are. t.beckett was not a threat, Von Eagle was not a threat. So by going after those two first, you're essentially leaving him a lot of time to build up a large stockpile of cash and threaten you. Because yeah, he has 60%. He's 60% of the way to buying you already. And he has these two Offworlds that aren't really getting attacked. Because this is really weird that there are all these Offworlds up, and that was the second Dynamite bought this game. Again, well, not again. I haven't talked about it at all, but yeah, being aggressive in the black market is very important. Slow down your rivals, especially with big targets like these Offworlds. Make sure to constantly knock down the goons. If they're not, once you know they're not goons, you can use these spies to help with that. Then knock them down with dynamite, take them with mutinies if you can. That will really slow down your competition and put you in a much better position. Other than that, yeah. Once your stock got split up like this, you're in a very poor position. Yeah, going after this, I mean, power is very expensive, but going after power like that doesn't really make the most sense. And if we're looking closer to your own base, well, electronics have completely died by this point. This mine continues to be barely productive. You have so much silicon. If you just moved into like 4 solar panels, then that would solve a lot of problems. Again, this carbon, doing anything else with it, that's silicon. There's a lot of little things with wasted claims and just the stock play that didn't really work out properly. Right, and the replay ends there, so I can't really finish watching it. But yeah, that's the main idea. One, you did a pretty good job moving through the early game. You secured your you took a nice lead. You had great territory, very nice found. Started trying to consolidate that lead with patents, with the Offworld. Good, good decisions, good investments. It's just the stock game. Little problems with these wasted tiles, and well, some things also maybe problems that you could have foreseen with the power, which wasn't a huge deal, I guess, long term. It did give Von Eagle a very nice boost, but it didn't sink you into an unreasonable amount of debt. Still, I mean, going to, I don't know, optimizing power a bit, going for that, connecting this and going superconductor that I talked about, any of those things could have helped. But what you did optimize was fairly reasonable. Yeah. That's about all there is to say about this one. We take a quick look at charts and graphs. It's slightly less than he did Offworld. Yeah, he actually made more overall. I guess that was largely on the back of electronics. Yeah, about 400k there. 200k off power. He did a good job with power. I feel like the triple win was a bit of an overcommitment, but since no one really adjusted properly, it worked out very nicely. Where else did his 1.5 million come? Let's take another look. Okay, yeah. So, made about 750. About 500, 700-ish net. So, significantly more than you, yeah. And that's mostly just the wasted tiles. Okay. Black Market definitely ended up much cheaper than it should have. In a game that lasts this long with so many valuable targets, this should have been used a lot more by everyone. It's hard to point out specific instances when there's so much going on, but that's just something to keep in mind. But for now, that's gonna be it. Thank you everyone for watching, and if this is helpful, feel free to reach out on the Discord server, post your own replays. There are people who will be willing to look them over and provide help, if not in the form of video, in the form of just advice. We'll see what happens. Anyway, see you all next time.